Welcome back, coaches. This is the football coaching podcast. The pause. Yeah, I know. I see your eyes. The
200
intros have gotten too similar. I'm gonna have to go all out on one or the other. I am Daniel Chamberlain, co-host here with Joe Daniel, as always.
Tough coach.
Currently putting my foot in my mouth in front of my boss on a podcast, so it's great.
All right. We're all tired.
Yes. Quickly, before we get too far in, I'll introduce our guests. We are joined tonight by Owasso Rams new head coach, former DC, Coach Antonio Graham, aka AG. Coach, how's it going, man?
Man, going good, man. Thanks again for having me on the show, man. And I'm trying not to. I kind of never mind, but thanks for having me. Got to hold in the laughter, but oh well. So, yeah.
Oh, you made it the big time now. You got on the football coaching podcast. That's where
Yes,
everybody dreamed. Everybody in my circle dreamed of getting on this one.
Dude, like I said, it's an honor and a pleasure to be in front of you two right now. So thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, our listeners probably don't know who you are unless they're just real local. So why don't you go ahead and just tell us about yourself, kind of your football journey, and how you got to be the head coach.
Well, man, I played. Born and raised in Alabama, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I moved up here. Attended Union High School under Coach Bill Blankenship. He kind of coached me, he did coach me through high school, and basically coaches like going through high school, they all basically raised me. I lost my dad while I was in high school, and so I had a bunch of high school coaches and counselors and teachers kind of just bring me into their homes, and we all want to take all the credit for I made it on my own, but there's no way, and it took a village, brother, and it's one of those things that I'm grateful for. That it took a counselor, a teacher, a coach, a friend, a neighbor to help me along the way, and it was definitely was not easy. But once I got done, I went to Pittsburgh State to play football there, and got my degree. And once I got my degree, man, I was just like, I thought about going 2 or 3 different routes, and man, it just all kind of reverted back to coaching. So, man, I got my first coaching gig at Union High School, my old alum, and when Coach Blankenship got the job at Tulsa, he gave me a call, and he tricked me to be on the staff. He calls me and he was like, "Hey man, I want to meet with you or whatever." I'm like, "Yeah." I get there. He's like, "Yeah man, I want you to be my linebackers coach." I'm like, "All right, fire it up." So I start. He's like, "No, actually, you're going to be a GA." And I'm just like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" So I took like a $40,000 pay cut, making $10,000 a year, and I'm like, "What the heck?" And I was not the most cool guy ever. And the only thing I know about the University of Tulsa is private school. You kind of got to be a nerd, you know what I mean? I'm like, there's no way I'm going to make it here in school. And Tulsa is one of those schools is that like, you got to go to class, man. And so by the grace of God, man, I kind of got through the grad school, got a master's degree from there. And once we got let go from Tulsa, I went back to the high school route, and Coach B worked his way back at Owasso, and he gives me a phone call, and I was like, I couldn't believe it that he took that job, because Owasso was kind of on the downhill slope, and Coach Patterson, the last guy was there, he did a heck of a job, and he stepped down from the range, and I was like, I'm loyal to a fault is one of my biggest weakness, and so I joined him over there, coached offense my first year there, which I think that made me a way better coach. I think that's a thing that I try to get guys to do. Coach, make you a better defensive coordinator, vice versa. And so was an assistant there, and our DC at the time, he took another job at Sand Springs, Bobby Clink, and I kind of stepped into the range and was a DC for 3 years. And Coach B stepped down this past year, and they gave me the opportunity at the job, man. And so I'm hitting the ground running, and there's no book on how to be a head coach. I'll tell you that. So don't all these notes I took for the last 10 years on being a head coach, not one of those apply to me yet. So it's a different game right now, man. So
I'm very excited that our paths crossed. Coach Blankenship has become really a friend of the podcast. He's come on 3-4 times now, and he's always just have a phone call and he's here. So really gotten to know him, and I'm so glad he let me come over and just learn from you guys. But I think it's super cool. I love the press conference when they said you were going to be the next head coach. He wouldn't even let the AD make the call. He's like,
Oh
no,
yeah,
it's me, right? Just perfectly Bill.
yeah.
I'm going to do things my way, and this is how we're going to do it. So
Absolutely,
that's
man.
awesome.
Don't expect anything less.
Well, super glad to have you on the show, man. I joke about being the big time, but we're just two guys talking ball. So
That's what it's about.
absolutely. Before we get going here, Joe, would you like to pay the bills?
Yeah, we can check out joedanielfootball.com and get the 40 Coach Simple rules for coaches that want to win more football games by going to joedanielfootball.com/rules. That's got things that can help you right now. Just decision making, coaching philosophy. We've got the non-negotiables for every position, the things that your kids that must do if they're going to play for you, or at least that our kids must do if they're going to be on the field for us. I know a lot of you youth coaches, you got your I get questions this time of year with youth coaches of what do I have these minimum play players. What do I do with them? It's like, here, get them to do this one thing and you can survive with them. And there are always things that take no talent. There are things like squeezing a down block, things like, following a pulling guard. And it's like, they take no talent. Get your kid to do that. So some more like corner alignment is a really basic one. So check that out if that's something that interests you, and you'll find something in there. There's 40 Coach Simple rules. There's offense, defense, special teams. There's all kinds of stuff. Check it out, joedanielfootball.com/rules.
Awesome. Quickly talk about athletic speed movement. We've talked about it on every episode for a while now, over a year. Del Basquet's 40 plus years. I think we're at 46-ish years of experience from the very first speed coaching in the NFL to just producing 6 Hall of Famers in the NFL, 25 plus all-pro players. And what really sticks out to me is all the people who busted through their ceiling in football because of Del's program, right? Like an all-pro NFL player was probably going to be all-pro. But it's the guys that got into the NFL that shouldn't have or wouldn't have, right? The guys that got to college but wouldn't have because of what Dell brought to the table. So Athletic Speed Movement, jump over there. We have an in-season program coming out, so jump into the website and you can learn all about it.
Yep.
AthleticSpeedMovement.com. Question 1. So, guys, we're going to jump right into some football. I know that, I have been at a place where scheme had to change. Joe, you talked about how you're kind of de-evolving your scheme this year. Not really changing the offense, but you weren't the OC last year, so it'll be some change. AG, you're at a school now that last year big 4-2 and 3-4 school, and now you're switching some things up. So we just want to talk changing scheme. And first question is, what do you do to determine, like, what are you looking at to determine if you need to change scheme or not, whether you should or not? AG, we'll start with you. You're the guest of honor.
Man, I think the biggest thing about it is like you got to take your ego out of it. I'm a big 4-2-5 guy, and last year in particular, 2 years ago in particular, I had 4 linebackers that were studs, and you running a 4-2-5. There's no way that you're gonna get those linebackers on the field. And so, as much as I kind of hated and bit my tongue, Coach B was like, "You really need to run the 3-4, man. It just fits us. I'm telling you." And I'm kind of avoiding him, him being an offensive guy. I'm like, nah, whatever. And he finally come in my office like, "I want you to run a 3-4." And I was like, "Yes, sir. I will run a 3-4." And it made it. But at the end of the day, that backside backer, I somehow convinced myself that backside backer is that linebacker he's just a loose 5, at the end of the day. So to make me feel better, so I still felt like I was running a 4-2-5, and but I think the biggest thing, man, you gotta look at your personnel. Like this year we got a bunch of DBs, and we're going to try to run a bunch of do a lot of things in the back end with those DBs because we got a lot of DBs this year. So I think you got to start up front with your personnel, and also in today's world, man, as much as we hate this, you got to be able to somewhat please kids in a way, because with the transfer portal, these kids definitely here in Tulsa, in the suburbs in Tulsa, like if a kid don't play and he's really good and he's sitting on the bench, he's gonna leave. So you better come up with these different packages and different ways to find ways to these kids on the field. Definitely if you're kind of got a lot of talent or whatever. And if a kid ain't play, he's out of there. So I think one thing has to start with your personnel, obviously, and then how deep are you in those positions? Do you got a bunch of guys that are a two that should probably be a one and probably can go somewhere else to start? So you may want to figure out a way where you come up with these different packages that fit the same scheme, try to use the same terminology and stuff like that. So I would start with that first.
Sir. Joe, same question to you.
Yeah, I think, and of course, we're coming from different worlds where, four linebackers, if we have four good linebackers, they would be four positions. Where we've got 27 kids and so the numbers are different. But the fact remains we have types of kids, right? We have kids that are, some years we are DB heavy. We are skinny, light in the tail, speed kids. Some years we have linebacker kids. Some years we have, the kids that aren't the fastest, but they're big and they're, good athletes or whatever. And some years we just have a bunch of big kids. Not very often, but that's the idea. And we figure out where we can put them. And what we figure out, and we talk about a lot on this show is figuring out where the best 11 go and then kind of adapting to that. It's like we've got 11 that can play, and how do we get them out there? And I mean, one of the most obvious reasons is the one you already brought up. The head coach said so. That's probably the number one reason that I've ever changed scheme, is because the head coach said so. I'm a 4-2-5 guy as well, primarily, but I really, I don't care. I'm like you. I'm like, if you slide me into a 3-4, it's everybody moved over a half man from a 4-2, and then mentally I'm calling that 3-4 like a 4-2-5. Same thing in a 4-3. I look at a 4-3 and I go, okay, well, you just slid the defensive end out, slid the sandbacker, strong safety in. It's a 4-2-5, but they're in, as soon as you move the tight end out, none of it matters anyway.
Right.
So, and then in the 33 stack, I like to create fronts. So, so I don't care that much about the numbers, and we're going to talk about this, but, ultimately it is, where can I fit these guys into our scheme? How can I make it work? One of the advantages that I have is having done this a lot with a lot of different programs. We look at what we've got, and we may start out as I'm talking from a defensive standpoint. Offense is totally easy because it's like, all right, I want to be in gun because I want the quarterback to run. I want to be under center because I like the downhill and I like the timing. I want to be, those are little scheme changes, but ultimately for us, it's inside zone, outside zone, power, counter. We changed a little bit of our outside run play stuff, but our base passing game doesn't change. I ain't coming out and being an air raid one day. I love double wing, but I'm not going to come out and be a double wing guy. I'm not going to be a wing T guy. I'll use elements of all of those things, but none of it's, the core of the offense is the offense. And then I think the thing about offense is you can put lipstick on a pig. I can change the formation. I can shift, I can motion, and it's still the same blocking scheme. So offense, like, I don't foresee a reason to ever change my offensive scheme. And by the same token, I don't know if I'd ever actually change my defensive scheme at this point. I'll just change the numbers. And, and then, like I said, the rules stay in place, which we'll get to. But the number one reason is the head coach said and that's how we got into a 3-4 the first time, was the head coach said we have to do something different. And we did the 3-4 thing, and that was where it started. But yeah, it's just using your players, putting them in a position. I'm kind of like you. Like if it's the 4-2-5, guys will come to me and be like, well, the 4-2-5 and the 4-3 is the same. Guys will come to me and be like, we don't have any big guys. And I'm like, that's fine. I take the backup safety and put him at the weak side end.
Mm-hmm.
So just let him run. So unless I have like a loaded defensive line room, it's just a fast kid playing weak side end. Like I don't care about that. I'll put a wrestler at nose. I don't care. So it's not about big kids and small kids and fast kids. It's about the what fits us, what fits our opponents, what do we want to look like? I love being a base. And we have a lot of teams that have a lot of success being a base 4-2-5 and just being great at the basics. But there comes a level where just the basics isn't it. right? That there comes a point where you got to do something different, or you got to move, and you can't be in one spot. So those are things to look at, is like what fits our players, but the underlying core stuff doesn't change.
I talk about this every time the odd front, even front discussion comes up, and I somehow think of it backwards from other people, right? If I hear people all the time say, well, we didn't have a lot of D line types, so we went odd front. And to me, that's
Right.
counterintuitive, right? Because so you don't have a bunch, so you have 3 that might be able to take on a double team, but if
Now
one
you
of
have
them goes
less.
down, now you have no one to replace him, versus I could just stay in an even front, and like you said, Joe, I can roll safeties down
Mhm.
and replace the nose and do all these things because I can avoid a double
And if
team.
nobody uses a tight end, you can replace either one of them because they're the same.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. So now I can use 3 linebackers on the line and have my 3 tech be my 1 true D lineman. So I kind of that's an ironic part, I guess, of the odd and even front conversations. So that's the first thing too is coaching. What do your coaches know? So if you're breaking in a guy, I have a good friend of mine that's a linebackers coach. He knows how to coach when there's 2 linebackers. If there was 1 or 3, it would change the base stuff that he knows, right? And he's a guy that's always been a lay coach, so getting in and getting the nitty gritty is harder for him. He doesn't have the time. He can't sit on podcasts and all that. And so if you start changing up numbers there, do your coaches know what they're doing? Joe, you're the one that told me like the 4-3s. You got to have coaches that know how to coach the 4-3, right?
4-3 is absolutely beautiful, and it's amazing, and it needs good players and good coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
if I was in a college, like if I got a D3 job tomorrow, 4-3, bro. Like
Yeah.
let's go. But not where I'm at now.
Right. And so that's what I look at. And then just the schedule. I think you have to look at what you're trying to stop that year. If it's if you're a 5-5 team, who do you need to beat to get 7 wins? If you're a 7-win team and you're going to make the playoffs, how are you going to knock out that first team in the playoffs, right? To get to round 2. Wherever it is that you're at in your program, what do you need to do to get better? Who's the team or 2 that you've got to beat, and what is going to help you stop them? And I think that's what you got to focus on top of all the stuff that y'all said. Y'all took the good ones, so it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Low-hanging fruit.
What do you like? So when you let's go off topic here, because you're in an area with, obviously you have one of the top team, and you've had great success, but you have what is one of the top teams in the country. I mean, the well-known teams in the country that you have to stop and figure out how to stop.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for a coach who was very successful, but he was a win at all cost type of guy. So you got to kind of keep that in mind. And we were at a junior college level, but he would come in, and he came in and basically would look at who was the big dog. So when he came in at the junior college level, this is 15 years ago now, he came in and looked at Butler County and built everything around how do we beat Butler County Community College in Kansas, because they were 3 or 4 time national champions at that point. And it worked in part because Butler fell off a little bit. We never beat Butler, but we scrimmaged them. We did well, but it worked in that he took a team that was kind of struggling, and within a couple of years, because he recruited specifically to beat Butler, we finished ranked number 9, had number 1 ranked offense, and so he built for that. He did the same thing he did the same thing in Idaho high school level. He did the same thing in South Florida high school level. But then I think there's also at the high school level, maybe there's yeah, that's a good idea, unless you're so far down, it's like we're not going to build to beat. Like, I don't know who the worst team in your area is, but like, should they be building to beat, the top dog, or should they be trying to beat the next bottom dog and like get a win? Like, I'm interested, where do you think about that as far as changing, and who are you targeting when you're changing scheme?
Man, I think on my part it's more of starting in the weight room. Obviously, your off season. I think you got to start there because here in this area, well, like the Bisbee, the Jinxes, they're good in the weight room and they're physical, and you got to start the culture there. And obviously, I think here, as anywhere, the toughest team, you got to be tough, and it's It's trying to find those kids, like you said earlier. I'm a big believer of hitting a wrestler at nose. Even if you got to
Yep.
slam them or whatever you got to do, find those tough kids, and you got to win your one-on-one matchup. And so I think it's you got to build that culture in that off season, and you got to get guys competing, and you got the reason why this is going off topic, and I'm not trying. The reason why I love wrestlers, man, because it's mano a mano out there,
Yep.
and you ain't got that Sam linebacker. If you miss the pull, that backer's gonna come fit. You don't got that guy on that mat. So I think it starts with that, just getting that winning mindset, man, and compete. I think if you start there and teach these kids how to win in that off-season program, hopefully that translate to the field or whatever. But it starts in the weight room, in that off
Yeah.
season. And so you start there, and hopefully you can kind of create it that way. So that's just my opinion. Would you kind of agree with that somewhere, Chambo?
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely the base of it. In fact, the places I've been that are successful have successful weight rooms. Right?
Hmm.
It used to be the advantage. You got a weight room, you had an advantage on everyone, and now it's the norm. Right? If you don't have a good weight room program, a good culture, it's culture. I don't care what your program is.
Hmm.
There's 1,000 of them for sale. Go buy one. But
Hmm.
if you don't have that culture, you're probably at a disadvantage at this point.
Yeah, and that's more of a
As
new
for
wave down here for sure. I'm sorry. You
no,
got to have a good strength staff and nutritions, and if you get those kids can buy into that, like pitting on the weight and doing it the right way, you can get some going. Because we want a kid to get a point of a pound every week. You know, and definitely in an off season, if those guys can buy into that, brother, you can kind of get where you need to go, because it's obviously the reason why Bisbee is so successful in the Geniuses and the Union. They're going to out physically, physically, they're going to whoop you up front. And if you can get those dudes up front, you can kind of get caught up.
it was it was a little culture shock for me because I went from a school with 3 kids showing up for weightlifting every day to where as a coach you're going, it's not even worth my time. Like I miss
Hmm.
my kids. I want to go home. But I got these 3, they're going to show up and get better. We're going to get better. To teaching in a class where my sophomore wide receivers were panicking because they hadn't put on enough weight this week.
Right.
They're trying to
Right.
chug water so they can get to
Yep.
the scale and weigh a little more, right? Because they
Yep.
care. The culture's there. So,
Yep.
Joe,
We
back to your question about what
Well,
is
I want to touch on this one real quick. So
Yep.
it's interesting because 2 of the top programs in the Richmond area in the last, I don't know, decade plus, um, Dinwiddie, who's still really really good, and Elsie Bird, who won 3 straight state titles, um, are both interesting because neither one of them had big linemen, right? Neither one of them had big defensive linemen or big offensive, and still don't. And their kids, though, they had very tough, very strong kids. Um, we looked at it. I think that at my previous job, which was at Amelia, where we had 480 kids in the school, we were one of the smaller 2A schools. Um, I think that the weight room was huge for us. We did the same thing, started with 5 kids in the weight room. They were the linemen. And then 3 years later, we had a very strong offensive line. But we eventually, over time, started getting 25, 30, and at times more than that coming into the weight room. We were getting, but the thing we did there was at a 2A school, we were just like every other 2A. Everybody was playing 3 sports.
Hmm.
So, and we don't have, we did get a class, but it was, it was dicey. It never really worked out. It was all this work was done after school. Um, I think the weight room helped us greatly because we were already very, very fast. Everybody had the limitation of everybody's playing multiple sports,
Hmm.
and trying to find weight room time is very difficult. And I think our kids bought in eventually. It took 2 years, but our non-lineman kids bought in eventually and our to the credit, our other coaches, other sport coaches were bought in to, hey, as long as we don't have a game tomorrow, go get an in-season lift, or go get track guys will come lift after track practice. Our baseball kids would come lift as long as they don't have a game tomorrow. Our basketball guys would come lift as long as they have a game tomorrow. Some of our basketball guys wanted to lift anyway because the program's a little down. And but I'm a weight room guy, as people know, but or that listen know. But I think that we looked at where we're at now, and I'm not sure it's the same because we play bigger schools, so it's not the exact same scale, right? They have more players. We're the smallest 3A now. They have more players, and it's that line that you cross where they have more players, which means more guys not playing multiple sports, more guys in the weight room all year. And we still work the weight room. We still focus on the weight room, but we found that the big advantage for us, and this is not just a plug for athletic speed and movement, but it partly is, the big advantage for us was not so much the weight training, but the speed training. Yep. And that was where we put our focus. Was we said, look, we are never going to be the biggest. And I don't know that we'll ever be the strongest no matter what, because our kids are playing 3 sports. And when you go from 700 kids to 1,200 kids, there's a big difference in who's playing 3 sports. And so we put the emphasis on, speed training, which I thought we could get that make that impact faster. And yes, it's athleticspeedandmovement.com. But that was where I absolutely agree. You've got to find an edge. And whether it's catching up and surpassing them in the weight room, or finding an edge in, like for us, it was speed training, finding an edge in, I thought I've seen schools that get the edge in just execution, right? Or they do something. We see teams all the time that just do something different. They come out and they're the only triple option team, or they're the only air raid team, and they're just so good at it that they get or they're the first team to run some new scheme, and the first team to put the RPOs in got the edge too. So I think that's where you get the edge on those top teams, or move yourself up into that top, is finding an edge somewhere.
Yeah, and those advantages, I think they come from a lot of places, right? It could be, Joe, your thing is, if you don't know, hire a professional.
Yeah.
You can send them to a kicking camp. You can send them to a quarterback camp of some of these guys that are, well-known, knowledgeable places. And especially like in my area, there's a whole bunch of not got a lot of money, really small schools. Well, if you can get that quarterback club to come up with the $500 to send your kid off to the kicking camp, eliminate those missed field goals. How many more games do you win over the last 3 years, right?
Yeah,
so moving forward, we're that much better. Long snappers, how many places does that help your team? If you can get to a quarterback camp, get over to the lineman camp, right? If you can just invest in your kids that way, I think that's the advantage at my level, where I'm at in coaching right now. Because a lot of these people are just believing that the guy that sent in his resume that said, I'm a quarterback guru, and you hired him to be your quarterback coach, that he actually knows what the hell he's doing. And he was watching YouTube videos in his car for his everyday drills right before practice and taking notes on his phone so he could go do everyday drills, right? Like, that shit happens, man. People lie on the resume to get a job. So go hire that professional and know for sure that you're going to have the advantage. And I think in my case, it would. Now, of course, where AG's at, that's probably not the answer. but
different,
but still, it is. I mean,
no doubt.
Right?
It happens. I tell you, I would add this too, man. I think you got to have a really educated staff to get the edge too. I think what some programs do, they take advantage of the high school rules. Depending on what state goes by, because in Texas, they play by college rules, right? In Oklahoma, they have their own rules where, you know, you don't get a chance to match the personnel, right? So they can run guys on and off. Know who you're coaching against. That also give you an edge, I was with a staff man. The biggest thing that my boss would do, he would study the other coaches and see how good of a coach. If we knew that they had a sucky corners coach, we would freaking attack. So it's almost getting, if we knew that, if that linebacker coach sucked over there, we run a bunch of jet motion just to get the eye, and run with the pulls, and they wouldn't read one pull. So you got to find more ways to get edges, and so I think what sucks for us is in Oklahoma you can't match personnel. It sucks. It's horrible as a defensive coordinator, and And there's guys running on 10, 11, 12, jumbo. It just sucks. So find a way to get an edge and do it well. Practice it.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
For sure.
Yeah. The my favorite thing to have somebody be responsible for is listen for, you mentioned the corners coach, and that team's running, a cover 3, let's say, where the corner's a deep third player, and we're running power. And I just, listen for the corners coach to listen for somebody to yell at the corner for not making the tackle on a run play. Somebody's in charge of making sure that if the corner gets yelled at for not making a tackle on a run play, to tell me, so we immediately throw a power pass and throw the shot over his head, because I need to know that coach doesn't know that his guy's supposed to be back there for he's not a run first player. Let me know so I can make that call.
I love it. Jumping to question 2 here, and it's still kind of going back to that change in schemes, but it'll get way deeper than that as we've already chased the rabbit once tonight. But how do you ensure you're keeping your core principles of your team or your philosophy or whatever it is while you're making these scheme changes? And Joe, we'll let you start first since AG did the other one.
I think that if you have core principles, if you have those things that a lot of mine came from TCU. A lot of defensively, it's umbrella run fits, and that's like just absolutely. I don't care what we're in. It doesn't matter what we're in. We're going to have force. We're going to have alley. We're going to have spill. There's going to be, that's going to be the thing. And I don't care what the numbers look like. So that for me is a core principle. The drills and the things that I believe in, and the keep it coach simple, the keep it simple so the kids can play fast and all of that stuff, that is never going to change for me. And every once in a while I break it, not, just you get shiny object. I want to do this thing. This looks cool. And then it looks like crap, and you go, "Oh yeah, that's right. I have rules that I'm supposed to be following." But we have a coaching philosophy masterclass that's about just putting all of that stuff on paper. And the number of coaches that I hear who are like, "Oh yeah, this is our," we've talked about this, Daniel, is like the number of coaches who are like, this is my coaching philosophy, or like, this is the thing that we will always do, and then immediately watch them break it because it's not written down anywhere. It's just something that they've heard and it sounded good. Like, especially the ones that we talk about all the time. It's like the beginning of every Glazier Clinic speech that's ever been from defensive coordinators, which is, we're going to run to the ball, we're going to tackle, we're going to create turnovers. It's like, cool, but what are you doing that everybody else isn't doing? like that's like, those aren't principles. Those are, now if you put tons of emphasis on pursuit and running to the ball and effort, that is a principle. That's a thing. But like putting it on a sheet or talking about, that's, and then you go out and you just run a normal deal. That's not the same. Like on offensive line, I am detail. I am first 2 steps, aiming point, communication. And those are things that, if you aren't going to talk, if you aren't going to take the right first 2 steps, you probably can't play for us. And not everybody's right on the first day, but if you're not right 2-3 weeks from now, we got a real problem. So, those are the things that, like, schematically, I don't care that much about. But I think that if you have things that you truly, truly, truly believe in, you can adapt to that. And the things that you truly believe in, you mentioned, just Daniel, you mentioned like a guy who, all he knows is 2 linebackers. Like, to me, that's not a principle. Like, we're always going to have 2 linebackers. That's not a principle. We're always going to run cover 3. That's not a principle, because those are schematics. Those are alignments. But the principles are things that it doesn't matter what you line up in. The things that we talk about with force, a line where they're going and meet them on the way. All that kind of stuff is like, that never changes. And so I think if you have those things that just you 100% believe in, and it takes time to get them. But if you have those things you 100% believe in, if they're broken by schematics, then they're probably not a principle. They're probably an X's and O's.
Yeah, good point.
Man, I definitely agree with you on a lot of that. I'm a 4-2-5 guy. You got to have an umbrella set. You got to have a force player, and to me, you got to be able to play cover four with a 3-by-1
Mhm.
check. That's just what it is. And I don't care if it's a 3-3 stack. I'm gonna figure out a way to play cover four. If it's a 4-2-5, and it's gonna be the same verbiage and everything. But I totally agree with you, brother. Like you guys talk about the book, you guys got the non-negotiables.
Mhm.
Dude, that's big time for me because one thing about me and everything, we got. I don't care who's the force guy. I don't care if you're running a 3-4 or whatever. You better have somebody who could be a force guy. Whatever it and it to me, it got to be a linebacker. You got to be an overhang guy. My force guy
Yeah.
is not going to be a guy playing in the back end. That's a known. That's a non-negotiable. You got to have linebackers who can read pulls. You know, and whatever you do, I don't want to have a run through. I don't want to say we're fitting off the back or anything. No, they better be reading the freaking guards and reading the triangle. So I'm big on that, man. And the biggest thing is it's not running to the football. You better be able to tackle when you get to the football too. So we're gonna be a well tackling team, and but you got in today's world, man, you got to be able to practice everything, even in the off season. And so we tackle in the off season this year. With the hot tackling stuff, just trying to build that toughness. Like you're gonna have everybody wants to be tough, but you just can't practice toughness in the fall. So you want to be a good tackler, but you can't just tackle it in the fall. So that Wednesdays in your off season or whatever, we like to compete, tug of war and everything. No, man, we're gonna practice how to tackle. We're and everybody's doing it. Even the O lineman, even the quarterbacks, the kicker, we're all teaching it. And it can't be one coach doing it neither. Because even as a head coach, I believe in this big deal that your O-line coach got to teach it as much as he don't want to. The linebackers, everybody got to be on board about it. So that's my biggest deal is that we're gonna have this deal, and when I'm setting the stone, it's non-negotiables as me, and even myself when I was worried about going from a 3-4, going to a 3-4 from a 4-2-5. I was like, well, good. I got my force player out my overhang. So nothing on so I was gonna figure out a way to still get what I want.
Yep.
And I'm set in stone in that. So that's my
I
big
love the Joe. You mentioned it earlier how you just end up creating fronts, right? It doesn't matter. In my eyes, I've just gotten so general with football on defense. It's like these are all the exact same defense. Like we're just creating. I'm creating that over or under front
mm-hmm.
out of a 3-3, a 3-4, a 6-2, whatever it is, right? We're gonna get an over or an under, and we're gonna play football. It's just how do we get there? So I love that. I mean, AG, honestly, it makes me feel good to know that guys as good as you even were like, I'm reluctant. I don't want to do it
I know
because
I'm stubborn.
because I've been
I'm
there,
stubborn.
right? Like, I don't want to
Even
do it.
even when a legendary coach tell you to do something, and he's like, "Yes, sir," but I'm gonna figure out a way to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I
I'm
was,
Yeah,
gonna find a way, but I don't want. This is,
yeah, yep.
and we've talked about that before. Is like sometimes you get that mandate from above, and you have to figure out how to please the head coach and satisfy all that he wants without sacrificing all that you want and believe in. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, you're a much better coach because what you've learned is how to adapt
There's no
what
doubt.
you're doing or what you believe to, in this case, to the head coach. But a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, you may have to adapt it because of your players or because of your assistant coaches.
Mm-hmm.
But you've learned how to adapt. And once you start learning how to adapt it one way, the next way and the next way becomes a whole lot easier
Ain't no doubt.
to figure out.
No doubt.
I had to have a really good conversation with Coach Blankenship this off season because of that. Like, how do I? This is the thing I'm wanting to do. I'm being directed that I'll do it a different way. I'm struggling, and he was just like, "You think I went to Tulsa and ran the defense that I ran at Union, or what?" Like, no, I didn't get to keep my stuff, right? Like,
Yep.
that's so. Even the guy that has all the rings, the absolute stud amongst us, he had to do it too. So
Yep.
just be adaptable, right? I think when it comes to trying to keep your core principles, Joe, first of all, you challenged me right here because when I started thinking about like what are my coaching principles, and a lot of them are scheme based. right? I mean, a bunch of them.
Mhm.
And then some of them are very vague, like, yeah, we're going to run around, we're going to create chaos, we're going to create turnovers, right? All this thing. So I truly have to go back and like get my principles back in writing, because I think they've become so convoluted over the years as I've learned all these new systems. So that'll be my, well, we haven't done level up tonight.
Yeah.
The level up for next week will probably be, I got to go back and do. It's the first thing I ever bought of yours was your coaching philosophy, like class,
Masterclass, yeah.
master class. So apparently I have to go back and do that and figure out what my philosophy is.
It's like, it's not anything just like mind blowing, but it's getting you. It's the whole purpose of going through it. It has a 27-day, and obviously, you wouldn't go through 27 days right now, but something you could do in January or something. You can do it without that, but you could go through it, and it's basically like a 10-minute video every day that's like, a question, and you fill out like a little worksheet type of thing. But really all it is getting you to write down, put pen to paper of the things that you believe, because a lot of us we believe certain things, but we've never written it down, and we don't have it somewhere where we can look at it. And it's like, I mean, mine came from trying to find a tagline for a business, and I was like, you know what sounds good? Coach simple, play fast, win. And that was in 2015, and that means something very different than it meant 9 years ago,
Yeah.
because I have to explain it to people, and it's evolved over time. And like, but it's always come back to that. And now it's a thing that I use for like my entire life.
Yeah.
Like, no, we need to do this simpler, because like, I don't want to confuse people and whatever. And so like putting it down on paper is huge. And what you mentioned, the hawk tackle, like I've never thought of that as like, this is a core principle of mine, but like, we're not tackling any other way. And it's very much, one is it's been successful, works great for us often having smaller kids, but yeah, we can tackle all year long. We can do tackling drills, and we can work tackling, and we can go to the ground all year long because of this. And we couldn't do that when we used to bite the ball or all that kind of stuff.
And sorry about this, but that was another thing I fought, man. When I was told that I have to teach hot tackling and I can get my head across the ball carrier, I about lost my mind, because that was a core principle that I was not going to change.
Right.
I was like, I refuse to put my head on the butt side. Screw
Yep.
that. And so but now it became a lot cooler. Now I can teach this in the off season. I can gator roll and do it. So I trick myself, because in a gator roll, you ain't got to put your head across,
Right.
So
Exactly.
it's a valid movement. You can't gator roll soft. So I trick myself to like, okay, this is what I'm going to do now. Once again, find a
You
way
wouldn't
to make
believe
yourself believe in it.
the pushback I've got. So since basically my first year, I had no idea what I was doing in coaching. I probably shouldn't have been in a booth. My second year is when I picked up hawk tackling, and I got so much pushback from year 2 to, I guess, really from that point on. There's always been someone there that was like, nah, we ain't doing that. What is that? What are you doing? Like, get your head across, right?
I'm always fascinated by that, because it's like, it's become so just everywhere in football, to me, in football coaching. But I guess that there's guys who just aren't going to clinics and aren't going
There's
to.
guys that won't turn on a podcast. I can tell you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and it doesn't matter. You'll run into them at the highest level schools like Owasso, or the lowest level schools like where, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to run into those guys that just refuse to do
Right.
things different, because especially if they hear it on the internet. Oh, no.
Well, yeah. But I can't think of, I cannot think of I can't think of the last time that I was in a clinic or, whatever, where somebody was like, this is how we tackle. And it wasn't hawk tackle. It just feels like, or some variation. It just feels like, rugby tackling style has just become everything. And so when guys are like, yeah, we're not doing that, I'm like, I don't understand. Like,
What are you, barbarians?
Yeah, no doubt.
Or it's like you said, it's not so much if somebody's decided, no, this is just the way we're going to do it. I'm like, okay, if you've made that decision, you've made that decision. Okay. But like you talked about, Daniel, the guys who are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, and I still hear that, guys like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, like, I'm okay if you don't want to do this. It's not what I would do, but I can't understand how you haven't heard of this.
Yeah.
Right, for sure. How do you not know what power is, right? Like, come on. Last question here, guys. We're kind of going to change gears a little bit. AG, I know that when I got on your staff last year, I noticed that you weren't the one making the play calls. And then this year, of course, you've assigned a new DC because you're the new head coach. Joe, you've been in and out of coordinatorship and head coach, and I recently have taken a coordinator job, and then realized that maybe that wasn't where life was supposed to be, right? Like maybe that guy wasn't ready to pass over the reins. So the question to you guys is like, how do you know when you're ready to pass the reins to someone else, and how do you know when that guy's ready? So AG, we'll start with you just so we can keep our trend of swapping here.
Man. So I experimented with this a few different ways. Up here, we play our JV games on Monday nights, right? So you play your Friday game, and usually your JV game is usually the team you played that Friday, you know. And so I test my coaches to see how much they're paying attention because they're going to usually run the same scheme. So let's just say, hey, Coach Chamberlain, you're going to call a JV game, and first of all, are you going to ask for a piece of my call sheet that I called? Are you just going straight off the hip? Well, if you're going straight off the hip stuff, you're probably not going to be ready. Another thing that I did, man, I've learned from the guy, one of the creators of the 425, Brent Guy, who worked with Coach Patterson or whatever. I'm a GA, and we're in spring game. We're in spring practice. He looks up to me and telling me, "You're hot." And I'm like, "What do you mean? You got the defense." So I'm a GA and I'm calling the defense. And we would go in, and if I called 20 plays, he would grade us. Like, hey man, you went 15 out of 20. So I think as a coordinator, if you're kind of want to get the next guy ready, you got to put him in the same situations or whatever. Because one thing, and I believe with you, Joe, like you were saying earlier, man, like these guys, man, they just think they know it all or anything, and they just think they're ready. But there's a new generation of coaches, just like it is a new generation of kids. You go to these I'm not about to go on a rant. You got to be starting now. You go to these freaking clinics, and there's nobody in there paying attention or doing anything, or there's not enough of this going on, or whatever. It makes me mad. It really irritates me, or whatever. That's why when you called me, I jumped on it fast. I love talking ball, and so make a long story short is that, man, we got to do. It's up to us to get these new generation of coaches because there's no more of us going to the whiteboard drawing up. They don't. That's not cool anymore. There's no. This is not really cool anymore unless they come up with a new idea or whatever. So I try to get more creative ways, like doing practices. It's not just me calling it. I make the D line script, the inside, and just see if they're making the right calls or good darn well we're not going to be in a double fives against a 12 personnel set. You better have a three technique somewhere, and are they going to have a two bubble gaps? Are they going to adjust it? Just looking at them and see how they're lining up and teaching you as a coordinator, you got to be able to delegate and pitch stuff on them and call them out when they're wrong. And so that's when I kind of know a guy's ready. Is he's doing those little things right? Is he kind of on the same level and he's not making those mistakes? And is he even paying attention when you're game planning? And when you're game planning, who's throwing out all the ideas? Is it you and a D-line coach? Is it you and a secondary guy? And is that secondary guy also helping you out with the fronts? Once you find that guy, brother, you know you got a guy. So that's my opinion on it.
Awesome. Joe, same to you.
And again, I'm all about simple stuff. So so what I want to see if somebody's coordinating the JV, let's say, what I want to see, and it doesn't have to be somebody coordinating the JV. It can be somebody who's coaching their position group on the varsity or whatever the case may be. If somebody, but let's say JV coordinator, if that JV coordinator is paying attention to the details of the entire scheme and paying attention to, we talk about process versus result, right? If they're looking at things like, let's say that there was a big play that a kid made, but he was wildly out of position. If the guy is like, man, he made a great play and it was awesome and he's hooping and hollering and everything, then and he has no idea that it was done completely wrong and just by pure luck we got to this point, he's probably not ready. If he's real excited for the play because we scored and he's also turning around and going, and we're going to talk about that on Monday, he's probably ready because he realizes like it's okay because it worked, but we're going to fix it. If he's paying attention, if he's detail oriented of the entire scheme, that's a guy who's ready. Or if it's somebody who's very detail oriented of their group, but that can then translate that to the entire scheme, that's the guy I'd be going to and going, hey, call you call a little bit because I want to see you with the entire schemes that detail stay. And it's that I'm not worried about. I think one of the big indicators that somebody's not ready, and this is the job of the mentors, who are say the current defensive coordinator or the head coach, because a lot of times head coaches at small schools, we've got to hire a defensive coordinator who's not ready.
Yep.
Period. But like when I was a head coach for my 1 year, when I realized that head coaching is not a thing for me, I want to go back to be a coordinator where I don't have to talk to the principal.
Mm-hmm.
And I need a shield between me and the people that don't coach football. The thing that and I did have an experienced defensive coordinator, but I was the offensive coordinator, and so because I didn't have an offensive coordinator, so I was going to call the offense. I can't call the defense too. So somebody had to get ready, and then we had somebody who had some experience, but I wanted them to run our 4-2-5, and so I had to teach them the 4-2-5 and kind of bring them along with that. And he came along pretty quick, but that was a thing for me. And that was like that was somebody that was on staff. It wasn't like I went out and hired them and then was like, now this is what you're going to do. I was an inherited person, but I want to see somebody who's detail oriented, and I want to see somebody who is not trying to solve problems with scheme. If somebody thinks that the solution to the problem is a new front, a new blitz, a new coverage, rather than like that X's and O's are always the solution, again, they're probably not ready. The person who goes, okay, like you talk quarters coverage. Quarters coverage can stop everything. It's got weaknesses, but like, you got to change up front or something for that. But we're going to run quarters coverage, cover 4. And if we're getting, beat on something that we can make an adjustment to our cover 4 to stop it, that's what we do. We don't install a new coverage. We just get better at the one that we're doing. I remember Kirby Smart talking about when he was at Alabama, talking about how Nick Saban made them run cover 3 all spring training. And so they had to learn how to coach up cover 3, the 3 match. They had to learn how to coach up those 3 deep defenders to defend 4 verts, because the offense didn't have such restrictions. They were like, cover 3, let's go. And so the defense, Kirby Smart as the DBs coach had to learn, and Saban was the other DBs coach. So they had to learn how to stop cover 3 or stop 4 verts in cover 3, because it can be done. And like, that's somebody who's like ready. They're not a scheme guy, they're a solutions guy, they're a details guy.
Yep. That's pretty awesome that you said that. I had a DB coach that I worked with, and he was like, Coach, for 1 week, we just need to run cover 2 against everything. And I was like, God dang, that's gonna suck, But and I'm the DC, and I was like, you know what? That's awesome, because you got to be able to play it as a defensive coordinator. Dude, you can't call a perfect call every time.
Right.
And so what if it's like, I love what you said about Kirby Smart, like quarters coverage. Yeah, it could get beat is because the middle field is open. So maybe if you learn the route tree of receivers, hey, if that guy's inside the hash or outside the hash, they're probably going to run a post just by the receiver alignment. So if you teach kids, you get more detail. And that's one thing I learned from that guy. Coach, we can stop the double post because we're going to learn these guys splits, because there's only so much you can do where splits at. So that's a great point that you brought that, man. I mean, literally the whole spring, I'll call cover 4 1 whole week. And we're going to get good at cover 4, and then we're going to run cover 2 1 whole week. And Coach Blankenship thought I was stupid, but we were able to play those 2 coverages, and that's just what it was, and we're really good at it. So, good point.
You guys have once again taken all the low hanging fruit and even some stuff I would have never thought of. I sure think when a guy is ready, he probably needs to be able to coach every position. I think of my friend who's a linebackers coach. He's clearly not ready to call the defense because he doesn't know what cover 3 is. You know what I mean? So there is that general knowledge, making, solving problems, but mainly just answering questions about what we're trying to do. What is our overall scheme trying to do? Whether that's cover 2 and like, hey, we're just trying to push everything into those 2 safeties. Is it 2 match and it's, we want to cover bodies, not grass. What are we trying to do out here at all levels? And that could be offensive or defensive, right? If we're a big power team, why are we a power team? Is it because of our linemen? Is that why? Is because we got a great H-back that's going to be able to really get a kick? He needs to be able to answer all those kind of questions. My other focus on this was really like, when do you know you're ready to hand off the reins? And I don't know how anyone ever gets to that point. I'll be honest with you, because I have a blast calling plays on Friday night, Monday night. I don't care. So I'm not sure when someone knows they're ready. I guess just when you've been at it so long, like you've gotten stagnant maybe. If you're still doing the stuff you did from 15 years ago, regardless of success, maybe that's the time. I don't know.
I feel like Bill talked about that on here. You guys would know better than me, but I feel like Bill talked about it one time that one of the things that he loved doing was working with the coaches, and that was when it was like, okay, like you start to enjoy coaching the coaches more than not coaching the players, but calling the plays, mentoring the coaches. Is like that's the point where you're like, okay, like I just want to bring these other guys along. It's kind of that point in your career where you're like, you just want to give back type of deal.
Yeah, but you got to find those coaches that's be willing to invest. The ones that that's going to be ready. And I know for me, it was very hard, but it's somebody who I came up with. I think you're more comfortable if you can find somebody that believes in those same principles, or you give them no choice, So that's when you kind of get. But you also see him be prepared in meeting rooms. You see him make the adjustments, and you see him clinic. I think you can always tell a guy if they're ready or not as well, and you're able to get if how they can run their meeting rooms is a big deal to me, and how they teach the players and how well their kids play. It's kind of like it goes back when we're studying coaches. You probably that guy that you're attacking that corner, you probably don't want to make that corners guy your DC. But when you got a team that's well coached and they're setting edges and everything, that coach probably a dang good coach. So I think that has a lot to do with it too. Like if you're a guy in the range that came up with you in a coaching career, or if you coach, or you seen somebody who can just teach it well, man. And just because you can teach it well, that don't mean you can coach it well, So there's a way. So
I think I mean, like you look at go back to Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. It's like, even though it ended, I'm sure that there's a part of Nick Saban that would have preferred not to have created the guy that, was like the problem. But,
yeah, no doubt.
But, at the end of the day, like that's a pretty cool deal, is that this guy was your assistant for years and years and years. And then, goes up to become like, not your arch nemesis, but I mean, like, the heir apparent to the SEC. I mean, in a way, or already has been. And it's like, that's pretty cool. But like you said, I would have a really hard time going out and getting a job and having the, let's say it's a college and the boosters are like, we need you to go hire this hot shot that you've never met before, and he's going to come in and do his stuff. And no, hire my friend. So like, I'm the offensive coordinator. My friend is the head coach. He still gets to make all of the play actions up, and that's what he loves to do. But like, he knows that he can, we play off each other and all that sort of stuff. So that's easier for him to give up probably than the defensive side of things initially. And then like, if you are going to give it to somebody who's been on your staff, if it's somebody who is like, wants to sit under the learning tree, either it needs to be a friend a coaching friend. Doesn't have to be your best friend, but somebody that you can play off of and still be involved in the X's and O's, or people who want to sit under the learning tree. Like Bobby Bowden, brought Mark Richt along through that system and other coaches, and Bobby was fine being the guy to call the trick plays because Monday through Friday, he was the guy, or Sunday through Friday, he was the guy teaching, bringing along that coordinator, and then on Saturday he could just call trick plays.
And I think a lot of going back along all those guys that you talked about, like the Bobby Bowden that was getting Mark ready for, he saw a leader in that dude too, man. Like the best coordinators or the best assistant coaches, man, they lead too. They're the ones that's in the locker room late and they're bringing somebody along with them. You know what I'm saying? They're the assistant head coach without even a title.
Yep.
And those are hard to find these days. That's just getting rare and rare. And so that's why I'm just trying to do as much as I can to help groom guys.
Yep. Well, awesome, gentlemen. Just because of time, we're going to move on to the level up section here. I could sit and talk ball all night long, and I know both of you could as well. Joe, I'll let you break open the new location of the level up here at the end of the episode.
So I have a book that I haven't finished yet, but I think it's a really good book, and I don't know that many people have read it, although it is a New York Times bestseller from years ago, from like 1991, I think. I've kind of figured it out. The name of the book is a terrible title. The name of the book is Thick Face, Black Heart. And it is a kind of leadership. It's a little bit of an entrepreneur deal, but it's not really. It applies to everything. This person came from China. The person who wrote it came from China, was born in China, and then their family was basically driven out of China by Mao and the Communist Revolution and all that sort of stuff, and then was pushed to Taiwan. And then eventually she moved to, it's very, I had to research, this is a girl or a guy, because it doesn't just say it in the book. Came to America and brought 2 books. And one of the books was, I think, Art of War. And the other one was this book that, essentially, she said, it was this really influential Chinese philosophy book, but it wouldn't make any sense translated. It's just all based on things that people from China know and nobody else does. So you couldn't just translate it to English and be like, here, read this. So it took all the ideas and wrote a book in English and to share this philosophy. And it's, so the Thick Face, Black Heart, and I'll and then I'm going to go on, because if it's something you want to read, if you want weird leadership, kind of personal growth books to read, this is a cool one. It's one that I'm going to have to read again, I'm pretty sure, because it's not really simple, but it's a different approach to things. And basically thick face means these are Chinese, thick face and black heart come from Chinese stories or proverbs and stuff. And thick face basically means you don't care what anybody else says or thinks. This is you have thick face, nothing affects you. You have your goal, you have your purpose, and you're going to do it. And black heart essentially means that you're going to achieve your purpose, whatever that may be, no matter what, essentially. And then there's levels of black heart, where it's black heart that is I'll commit murder to get this done. And then there's black heart that's I'll get this done within the at least the grayish boundaries. And then there's black heart, which is I'll get this done, but also I want to make sure that everybody else goes with me and we're all going to have a good, but they're all versions of that. And black heart is basically a spear. It's the idea of a spear. It's just, I don't know, if you're into weird, it's a pretty cool book.
So you read an anime leadership self-development book?
Not anime. It's not anime. Anime, I think, comes from Japan, not China. Daniel.
I don't know. I don't read them. Dragon Ball Z was the biggest I got into anime. So
I don't have any anime. So no, it's not true. But it's an interesting book.
Awesome. My level up is actually fitness related. I drink a good amount of cerveza, and then we have an espresso machine at the house, so I drink quite a few lattes, and so obviously that's milk.
Unless you're going to mix them.
So if you add, no, I don't. I don't think a beer latte would be that good. There's a Bush latte out there, you know. You can drink a Bush latte. It's just a Bush Light, but we say it that way sometimes.
Oh, okay.
But realistically though, I've just started getting back into my accounting macro stuff, getting back to self-preservation, if you will, because it was starting to run away with me. But that's kind of the level up. The biggest level up is like taking other people with you, which is kind of funny. We've been talking about it so much tonight because, you know, once you show some success at something like fitness, everyone else in your circle generally looks in it. But I, being in multiple circles, I've got the football circle, I've got the military circle, my friends. Well, the military circle is one that we struggle for whatever reason with fitness sometimes, especially National Guard, where you're a soldier 2 days out of the month. And so I have been able to kind of coach another guy who needs the help. His promotion's on the line, and like now we're, thanks to technology, we're going to be sharing our Run Keeper and My Fitness Pal, and I get to help him learn how to diet, eat correctly, because he just doesn't know, right? A lot of people, when they think, oh, I got to go on a diet, it's like no good food ever, just eat the worst food, and it's just simply not true once you learn how to do the math and count your macros. And so I'm getting to help him do that and help him track his runs. And now I'm going to have to run with him for, God, I hate running. Guys, I hate running more than almost anything on earth. It's so stupid. But I can't tell him, hey, dude, go run, and then not lead by example, right? So it's part of that be, no, do thing I talk about in leadership all the time. So sometimes you got to go do the really shitty thing. Not that you need to, but because he does.
Yep.
And he needs you to. So my level up is that, just getting back in the fitness world and then dragging somebody along with me. AG, what's something in the last however long of your first time on the show? So it could be your last, 30 years or whatever. What's something you've done to be a better coach or person or dad or whatever?
Man, coach wise, I start with that is learning all the kids' names and call them by their names, because, being at a bigger school, we got a lot of kiddos, man. And it's hard to make an attempt to talk to every kid or go by and touch them. Just make it a point to just do better, just greeting these kids, man, and making sure as a defensive coordinator, you coaching one side of the ball. That's easy, but being the guy, you know. You got to be able to be multiple and getting out of my comfort zone. I don't know why I got into coaching, because at the end of the day, I like this right here. I like the small group. I don't like the big group stuff. I'm not the big guy that's going to speak in front of like literally the other day, I'm at practice, and thank the Lord the dude blurred. You can go back and watch the clip on Twitter. But the camera guys, I'm like, man, will you get that camera out of my face? And because I'm not used to being, so learning how to adapt and be in front of people and not being I like to be on the radar a little bit. So just kind of getting in my comfort zone, and, you can't hide when you're at this level, at being a head coach. I don't care if it's 2A, 3A, you can't hide. There's no hiding. So, and I kind of like that guy to be very privacy and, but getting out of my comfort zone to be a little bit more outgoing, I guess. So,
absolutely.
So
what's good? That's what they say is like no sweeter sound than one's own name, right? Like that, everybody wants to hear their name. So
yeah,
kudos to you for doing that. That's big time, especially those younger guys. They'll really buy in for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Joe, man, let's close it out here. Let's pay the bills.
Again, go to joedanielfootball.com/rules. Get 40 Coach Simple rules for football coaches who want to win more games. You'll find something in there that's going to help you. We talked about coaching philosophy, and there's a sort of the base Coach Simple philosophy in there. There is the non-negotiables. We talked a little about that. Non-negotiables for me for each position, as I see it, and of course everybody's different, I'm sure, but so non-negotiables. There's some of our drill philosophy. How drills need to translate to the field and how you can make that happen. So if you're seeing drills that aren't translating to the field, that might be a place to start and look for some tips. So all of those things are in the 40 Coach Simple rules that for football coaches that want to win more games. Go to joedanielfootball.com/rules.
Awesome. What sales are opening and closing? I think this comes out next week. I think.
No idea.
No idea.
Yeah, it's all different now. The world has changed.
The world is on its
Things
head.
have changed. Things change. People change. You're the starting quarterback now. That's where we're at.
Happened.
Yep.
Mox. He threw a Mox reference. I love it.
Jonathan Mox is
Social
only one
media.
man.
I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter, which is also known as X apparently. I think the same thing on Instagram. I don't do a lot on Instagram. You can look me up on Facebook. Man, my name is spreading on there a little bit. It's you can just look up Daniel Chamberlain. You'll find me. It's a goofy looking picture. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Go to chamberlainfootballconsulting.com if you want to see my website that's never going to get finished because I'm so bad with Wix. Because if one of you listening, knows how to use Wix and you want to come help me, I will consult your football team for free because, good God, I'm so bad at this. And the last one is patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. That's where you can actually buy in and I'll help you get your team better, whatever it is you're trying to do this year on the small scale. Generally not a lot of X's and O's because that's where Joe and Kenny and all the guys that I work for are doing it. I want to help you be a better coach in other ways. Yes. AG, where can we find you on social media, boss? Somebody wants to reach out and have a conversation.
Coach Agram on Twitter and Tgram40 on Instagram and Antonio.Graham at owassops.org is my email.
Awesome. And Joe.
Follow me on Instagram at Joe Daniel Football. That's it.
Go to Joe Daniel Football.
And then share because you'll find clips of the football coaching podcast there. Your favorite football coaching podcast, the football coaching podcast, and then share those clips so that all of your football coaching buddies can watch them and learn and be better coaches and develop faster.
AG has a fan on his staff.
Oh,
Is Rat still there? Rat's still there, huh?
Absolutely.
Hi, Justin. Yeah. It's your shout out on the show.
Yeah. I will shout out to my to our new assistant who came down from Minnesota and is now. I've been told that his wife said, "Is that the guy that you always make me listen to?" Now she's going to hear this and find out that I heard this before I even met her. And is that the guy you always make me listen to? And he said yes. And she said, "I hate that guy."
Oh no!
I said, "That's right."
Don't worry. There's a circle of hate around.
No, there's many spouses, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
My wife enjoys what we say, so it's good.
Sure. That's why she.
If this is your first time listening to the Football Coaching Podcast, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can find us on your favorite podcatcher, especially on Spotify and Apple Podcast. If you've been listening for a while and you're on those two platforms, please give us 5-star rating. 4 is okay. If it's a 3 or below, give us a holler and let's see if we can fix something for you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the AG. Thanks, man, so much for coming on. I almost forgot. I did that with Ron the other day. I just completely forgot. Thank you so much. It is an honor to have you guys come on, and I know it's in season and you're wasting your Tuesday night. You'd rather be watching some film or something, but thanks, man.
This is better.
There we go. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Coaching Podcast. Remember, coach simple, play fast, win.